I am pretty exhausted. It was a long day. I got my ass kicked in the restaurant today, and it's time to drink tea. This is coming from Kumamoto Prefecture in Japan. Producer is Sakaguchien, and this is a Japanese black tea Wakoucha. Wa, of course, being the old name of Japan, and kocha meaning black tea, or kind of like foreign tea. Not a green tea anyway, like as is common in Japan, or was common especially back then. Black tea is still a very minor type of tea produced in Japan. I think it's still less than 1%, or probably hovering around that point. Do I have enough? Hell yeah. Okay, so there's a couple things we can note right off the bat. These are twisted lengthwise, kind of like you would treat rock oolong or a dansong oolong. The color is a pretty meaty looking brownish red. Pretty, I don't know, there's in my mind I'm thinking like liver color, but that's somehow, I don't know, maybe that's not quite accurate. Maybe secondly would be like beef jerky or something like that. There is no, oh, there's a little bit of pico. There's literally like 1% of this or less. But so they're all seemingly individual leaves, and they're all seemingly detached from each other and whole. That's exciting. There's mostly it's a spicy aroma. It reminds me of Christmas. It reminds me of cookies. Is it shortbread cookies? There's a herbal note, somewhat minty about it. It's a green, okay, yeah. It's a green aroma. Maybe also kind of like clove. Yeah, minty and clovey, I would say, mostly. It doesn't really smell like any other black tea that I've really come across yet. Maybe there's another type of cookie that's called a snickerdoodle. That's not uncommon in black tea for me. That is a molasses and ginger based cookie. Molasses, ginger, cinnamon, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely like, most noticeably is Christmas spicy. The leaves, they're like 2.5 centimeters long and pretty consistent. They're okay. Once you do this, you can obviously see there's some broken flakes, but the flakes are still like 5 millimeters. There's nothing is too small. So let's add some water. Feed her back. Alexa, start a timer for 2 minutes.
2 minutes, starting now.
So ratio is 1 to 75. I've got really high expectations for this, like immediately, based on the color, especially the viscosity of this liquid. I don't know if I'll be able to get a shot of it. It's something that I see and I experience frequently in very good tea. It's an abundance of what looks like an oily film sitting on the top of the water, where these little micro bubbles are suspended in the center. It's not like a froth, it's quite simply like an oil layer. Let's see if you can see. I suppose maybe you can. Yeah, I think it's visible. They're not the big bubbles in the center, that's not what I mean. Maybe it's harder to see without, I guess, having real eyes on this. I'm gonna get a strainer. Pause this. It's hot. Burns your nose. Alexa, stop. Even in that very brief glimpse that I just tried to steal of the aroma, it remained Christmassy. I think that quite the literal term I'm looking to say is called eugenol. This is the clovey fragrance. That's the chemical name. Now this smells more like black tea, but it's still pretty different. It's still sweet and spicy, brown, cinnamon, ginger. But there's a fruitiness to it as well. Now I'm kind of leaning towards saying like fruitcake. All those spices are still in there, and there's this dried fruit. Which fruit would that be? In this magical fantasy fruitcake, I would say persimmon, apple, orange. Maybe that's it. Obviously, you can't really do like orange in a fruitcake because it's mostly water. But you can use the rind, I suppose. So this is mostly persimmon and apple, I suppose. It's more delicate than I was expecting. So it's less intense than I would have hoped for based on the aroma. It has a pretty strong presence of tannin and grip on the tongue, which I would deem as a little bit of a negative. Yeah, I mean, the astringency is pretty strong. What is it like? I mean, as a tea, I don't really think there's a whole lot like this. Maybe the closest that you get on average might be Taiwanese black tea. But even then, I think that Taiwanese black tea at least the ones that I've tried, they tend to show a little bit better than this, in that they're more fragrant, but there's more potency in the flavor, and then there's less astringency. I don't think this could handle putting in milk. So like there's no obvious remedy if you're not eating food to have a way to deal with the astringency here. It's very like linear, like the flavor is just like it's on tracks and it just follows them. It doesn't really go anywhere interesting in the mouth. There's not really any surprises either. My tongue is like perpetually stuck on the roof of my mouth because of that astringency. It's fun to smell though. Like this is a really enjoyable smell for like the December months when these flavors really come into play. So it's a good representation of holiday aromatics, and if you ate it with some kind of fat like whipped cream, this would probably be pretty good with pumpkin pie. Yeah, it's got pretty much the pumpkin spice quality going, as another way to put it. So okay, to go through the metrics here, the aroma and concentration. Aroma is 7 out of 10, and the concentration seemingly is at 5. Could be 4. I'll go with 5. 7, 5. Astringency is going to get pretty high points. Four out of 10. Finish. Five. And then the weight. 4. It's pretty light. 3. 4 is okay. Dry leaf, wet leaf. Interesting. There's like a condimenty kind of in my head. I want to say banana sauce. That's the kind of like ketchup-y tomato sauce that's pretty sweet, that comes from Philippines. It smells like a tangy ketchup, and that might be a combination of tomato and persimmon. Could be the other thing. something sweet and orange and tomato. It could be orange. I wouldn't say persimmon though. I guess it has its use. If someone used it in a cafe setting where they could also provide food along with the tea, and then they could guarantee that people get the package deal rather than just have to drink this alone, I think it would have the most success. I wouldn't buy it personally. I don't really think it's at that caliber. But it also could be, you know, brewing parameters. There's like a lot of potential in the aroma, and you know, it could be brewed for half the amount of time, and you could probably cut down the astringency a lot, because that's the major negative, is that it's astringent as hell. Like when I rate it 4 out of 10, you have to think like that's very high, because ideally it's 0. And most Japanese teas and most Chinese teas, they don't register astringency on this scale, and if they do, it's 1. So the 4 is very high. Yeah, my mouth feels gritty now. It's like the surfaces are getting like sandpaper like, and you can really feel when you rub the tongue in your mouth. You can feel like your tongue is very sensitive. I don't have another sample. I think I only had 1 bag, so that's it. Thanks. See you next time.